Chapter 11. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Can I keep my identity as a slacker? Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The system then stepped forward and pulled her up from the ground. It raised Pei Ling's hand to pull off her veil hat, revealing a soft and beautiful face with snow-white skin and lips. At the moment, the brows expressed great shock. Holy shit! She collapsed just like that. Pei Ling thought that he would be killed with a single slap, but who knew that the system would succeed in one hit? However, that was not the main point. The main point was: System, what the F***ck are you doing? He did not know whether the system was crazy or not. In any case, he was about to go crazy himself. How did Pei Xian introduce this fairy some time ago? She was expected to be the next saintess of the Deep Sea sect. A saintess. Was that something he could even touch? Wu Tingshi only had a cultivation technique jade slip, and it was his master's belonging, and he had died without a complete corpse. If he touched the next saintess of the Deep Sea sect, how many portions of his ashes should be scattered? Wait, could he even have ashes? Ding dong. Like before, the system did not care about the host's emotions at all. Immediately, it gave a notification. Dao partner has been gifted. Continuing cultivation now. At this moment, he was in despair. Can I even keep my identity as a steady slacker after this? Jing Jingshan hurriedly returned to the Pei family's residence. He went to the main hall to find Pei Xian. Have you found Wu Tingshi? Where is he? Where's the stuff? Fellow Daoist Jing, don't be anxious. Pei Xian was talking to a woman. Upon hearing this, he hurriedly gave the woman a look and stood up to welcome him with a smile. He explained, Wu Tingshi is already dead. As for the items, according to my family's disciple, Fairy Li personally went to retrieve them. He was afraid that Jing Jingshan would forget his previous promise. It's just that after Fairy Li returned, she entered the green parasol compound directly but did not mention the bone tempering pill. Here are the 50 bone tempering pills. Upon hearing this, Jing Jingshan casually threw out a jade bottle and said, I'm going to visit senior sister. He turned around and left in a flash. Family head, these were all obtained by Pei Ling. That woman's eyes darted around as she hurriedly walked over to remind him, don't forget to allocate more to my tour when distributing it. Pei Xian kept the jade bottle and snorted. Since you mentioned Pei Ling, I called you here to talk about this. How have you been teaching this child all these years? At the crucial moment, he didn't even think about the family clan. He only has one more chance to meet the guests. Go tell him so that he won't think about only himself and think about the family clan more. He's a disciple of the Pei family. Won't it be good for him if the clan grows stronger? The woman was Pei Ling's stepmother. Her eyes brightened. Are you rewarding Pei Ling? I don't know about that. Pei Xian said indifferently, as a dignified family head, can I still covet the possession of a junior? I understand. The woman gave a cold laugh and said, don't worry, family head. If Pei Ling hides anything in private, I'll teach that child to be sensible. It's just that, after all my hard work, my Tuesday Pei Xian nodded. I'll get Hongyan to guide him more. While they were discussing, Jing Jingshan had already returned to the Jade Parasol compound. He first went to the back to find his senior sister. However, before he approached, he heard the urgent ringing of the wind chime under the temple. The sound waves traveled around, and Jing Jingshan could not help but feel dizzy. He knew how powerful his senior sister's intrinsic magic weapon was, so he did not dare to approach her. He only bowed from afar and said, Senior sister. After a moment, there was no response from the temple. Instead, the skulls on the wind chime were getting more and more agitated, while the souls within wandered around restlessly. Jing Jingshan forced himself to hold on. He felt uncomfortable in his chest and felt like vomiting blood. He could not take it anymore. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "I will take my leave for now. I will listen to my senior sister's instructions later." He retreated to the back and away from the temple. He finally caught his breath and returned to his room. However, as soon as he reached the door, he felt that something was amiss. The door was wide open. As his senior sister did not like to be disturbed, he drove all the servants away when he first arrived at the Jade Parasol compound. He only told them to tidy up the courtyard after he left. As for the rooms, they were not allowed to enter. No one in the Pei family would dare to disobey his orders. When he left earlier, he had clearly closed the door. Why was it open now? Jing Jingshan became suspicious and went on guard. He formed a hand seal before slowly entering the temple. However, as soon as he entered, he was overwhelmed by a putrid smell. He didn't dare hesitate and quickly checked around. After confirming that there was no one, he then carefully looked at the place that emitted the strange smell. With Zheng Jingshan's experience, he quickly recognized that it was left behind by someone who cultivated in his room and had broken through a minor realm. He could not help but fly into a fury. He then asked the Rakshasa painting, "Who intruded my room while I was not around?" The hundreds of beauties in the scarlet bone Rakshasa painting covered their mouths and chuckled. For a moment, the room was filled with giggling sounds that seemed to be coming from afar, and also seemed real yet illusory. Nevertheless, Zheng Jingshan listened carefully and nodded. After a moment, he revealed a contorted expression. A mere kid of the Pei family dares to be so presumptuous. It's too easy on him to become a blood sacrifice. Just you wait, I will skin him right now. As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't be bothered to rest and left furiously. On the other side, in the backyard of the Green Parasol compound. Perhaps because of the nameless cultivation method, Pei Ling's mind and body poured into training despite his initial fear. At the same time, a strange power was continuously infused into his limbs and bones. Not only did his injuries from the fight with Wu Tingxi heal rapidly, and even the third level of qi refinement that he had just broken through was also rapidly growing. After a while, the wind chime outside gradually became softer. Meanwhile, a ding-dong finally sounded in Pei Ling's ear. This cultivation has been completed. Thank you for using the smart cultivation system. With a single click, you will ascend without any worries. I look forward to you sharing the cultivation evaluation. If you are satisfied, please give me a 5-star rating. He instantly regained control of his body and returned to his senses from his cultivation. Run. Immediately. Now. However, at this moment, there was a series of footsteps from the outside, followed by Zheng Jingshan's voice. My greetings, senior sister. Pei Ling from the Pei family's collateral branch had the nerves to sneak into my room while I was out. This person has already fled from his crimes. If you don't have any instructions, I plan to go personally and skin him alive to warn the others. O for F***ck sake. Chapter 12. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Feedback for Cashback Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Pei Ling had almost suffocated in the room. Zheng Jingshan, who was outside the temple, was also anxious. Why isn't senior sister speaking? Is she too focused on studying the jade slip, or could not be bothered with me? At that moment, he hated Pei Ling to the core. After all, in Zheng Jingshan's opinion, the only thing that could anger his senior sister recently was that as an inner sect disciple and one of the faction leaders of the Deep Sea sect, he had allowed a disciple of the Pei family to find Wu Tingxi before him. Presumably, when Pei Ling took the item and came to find senior sister had increasingly believed that Zheng Jingshan was a piece of trash. Zheng Jingshan did not dare to leave without Fairy Li's permission. However, when he thought of how Pei Ling had not only embarrassed him in front of his senior sister, he had also broken into his room to cultivate. If he were to let him go like this, how could he tolerate that? As he was in a dilemma, he suddenly heard a familiar cold voice mixed with a fit of rare anger. Scram. Although Jing Jingshan was wary of the skull wind chime and did not dare approach the temple, he was still shocked by the deafening shout from inside. He calmed himself down and lowered his head. Yes. I'll be back soon. In the room, Pei Ling watched stiffly as Fairy Li slowly sat up on the bed. Her dress had been torn apart by the system's control of Pei Ling's body. At the moment, she was undraped, her delicate skin filled with the marks left behind by dual cultivation. There were a few dark red spots on the bed. The scene mixed with her originally fierce and arrogant temperament made her look holy yet fallen, giving off a unique charm. However, Fairy Li's face was frosty at the moment. Her eyes were burning with rage as she looked at Pei Ling coldly. Pei Ling stood there like a statue and looked at her expressionlessly. It couldn't be helped. He did not know what expression he should have to face this fairy. Fairy Li stared at Pei Ling for a moment before slapping her palm down. Pei Ling's hair stood on end. When he thought that he was surely dead, the wind from the palm almost touched his face before it suddenly slanted and pulverized a small table nearby. Next, Fairy Li flew into a rage and slapped repeatedly. All the cherry-picked furnishings of the Pei family, including the cloud bed, were ruined. After venting her anger, she seemed to have finally calmed down a little. She stood up from the edge of the bed, but just as she did so, she subconsciously frowned. Her footsteps suddenly stopped. In the next moment, her spiritual power lifted her body as she tilted her head to swipe a cold glance at Pei Ling. Just as Pei Ling thought that Fairy Li was going to say something, she turned around and entered the inner room. Not long after, the sound of running water could be heard from inside, as if she was washing up. Pei Ling stood rooted on the spot, not daring to breathe. He did not know why Fairy Li did not kill him, while he did not dare to ask, nor did he dare to run. He could only pray silently that Fairy Li was beautiful and kind to let him off this time. It was only then when he noticed that the system's rating panel was still floating in front of him. You still have the cheek to ask for a 5-star rating. Pei Ling was infuriated instantly. He went crazy in his mind. If I could delete you, I would have made you get lost anytime. I'll knock you down, do you hear me? I'll knock you down. Can you not F*King cause trouble every time you cultivate? It must be after I managed to escape from Jing Jingshan and Wu Tingshi that your F*King disappointed. And then you took it even further just to destroy me completely. As he cursed, Pei Ling suddenly felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, it was a dual cultivation method, not the sunflower. Manual, ding, dong. The system said mechanically, the smart cultivation system is at your service. 1. Click management and fulfill your dream of ascending. I look forward to you sharing your cultivation evaluation. If you are satisfied, you can give me a good 5-star evaluation. Get lost. Get lost right now. Pei Ling spat. Asterisk this stupid system. And you want a 5-star rating. UF *King system. I even think it's too much to give you a 1-star rating. With that, he gave a 5-star rating without hesitation. Ding dong, perhaps it was because Pei Ling had given it a good rating, the system did not remain silent after obtaining the 1-star rating in the previous 2 times. It rang again. Thank you for the host's heartfelt rating. Right on the heels of that, a terrifying scenario repeated itself. The system replied, ding dong. The host has given a 5-star rating. The system will give you an essence augmenting pill for free. Oh. Before he could think further, the system had already taken over his body. His body walked forward in large strides and took out a pouch with black bottom and silver pattern from the torn dress of Fairy Li on the ground. After opening it, he took out a jade bottle and promptly poured out the only pill inside. He held it in his hand, then casually threw the pouch aside. Ding dong. The essence augmenting pill has been gifted to you. Thank you for using the smart cultivation system. 1. Click management without worries and fulfill your dream of ascending. Pei Ling was dumbfounded. So I basically slept with the future saintess, then stole her items to reward myself. What kind of F***king scum system would do such a thing? He hurriedly picked up the pouch with the mysterious silver pattern from the floor before Fairy Lee came out, wanting to return the essence augmenting pill. However, just as he opened the pouch and was about to take out the jade bottle, the sound of water suddenly stopped. Dov Ko Pei Ling shuddered and subconsciously closed the pouch before stuffing it under a few pieces of torn clothes. In the next moment, Fairy Lee, whose long hair was slightly wet, walked out gracefully in a slightly different styled black gauze dress. With a cold expression, she did not look at Pei Ling. Instead, she rushed to the area of her torn dress and began searching for something. Pei Ling. Fairy Lee quickly found the pouch that he had handled. After opening it, she took out the jade bottle inside and poured it down, but there was nothing. This caused a hint of surprise to appear on her beautiful face. She stared at the jade bottle and fell into deep thought. Pei Ling, who had witnessed all of this, held his breath. His eyes widened and his mind almost stopped. The only essence augmenting pill remained tightly clenched in his palm after the system returned control to his body. Fortunately, the wind chimes under the eaves suddenly moved without any wind, emitting a few crisp sounds. Pei Ling felt dizzy. In his shock, he hurriedly bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to wake up. Meanwhile, Fairy Lee looked outside the door suddenly, her eyes filled with faint murderous intent. Senior sister. After a moment, a series of footsteps sounded from outside the door. Immediately, Pei Hongnian probed carefully, Senior sister. May I ask if you would like to stay in my residence for a few more days? Senior brother Zheng has already chased outside of the city for dozens of kilometers, but he hasn't found it. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Fairy Lee's cold voice. Zheng Jingshan. Senior sister, I'm here. Pei Hongnian went silent immediately. After a short silence, Zheng Jingshan's voice sounded carefully after Pei Hongnian. Senior sister, although Wu Tingxi was already seriously injured when he escaped to Yuanmu Mountain, he is still Elder Luo's disciple. Pei Ling is only at the third stage of qi refinement, but he was able to find and kill him before anyone else. He even took the cultivation technique Jade Slip. I'm afraid there's more to him than meets the eye. I thought that this person might have some secret, so I will capture him not only to vent my anger. Fairy Lee did not answer, and Zheng Jingshan's tone became even more apprehensive. So may I ask, senior sister, can you give me 3 days to find him and grind his bones into ashes? Pei Ling did not dare to make a sound while he stole a peek at Fairy Lee. Fairy Lee remained expressionless. Suddenly, she flicked her finger and shook open the door of the temple before walking out slowly. Outside, Zheng Jingshan had forced Pei Hongnian to come and speak for him, but Fairy Lee had exposed him and he was panicking. When his senior sister walked out, he heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that she was going to ask about the details, so he quickly stepped forward. Just as he was about to speak, he was shocked to see Pei Ling, who looked hesitant, standing by the door. You're Pei Ling. How dare you disturb your senior sister? Zheng Jingshan was shocked and hurriedly said to Fairy Lee, Senior sister, but this person's words and actions are. Before he could finish his sentence, Fairy Lee raised her hand and slapped him heavily on the face. Although she had not recovered from her serious injuries, this slap had no issue sending Zheng Jingshan flying backward and smashing him against the wall. Zheng Jingshan slid down the cracked wall and fell to the ground. He opened its mouth and spat out 2 teeth. He could not care less about his swollen face as he looked at Fairy Lee in shock and confusion. Pei Hongnian, who was at the side, was also puzzled as to why Pei Ling was here. Still, he would not dare ask under the circumstances. In fact, from Pei Ling's point of view, this Pei family's eldest son, recognized as the most outstanding youth genius of the young generation, was trembling and was about to leave. Fairy Lee ignored them as she took out a miniature black jade boat from somewhere. With a hand seal, the boat swelled up against the wind and instantly transformed into a three-decker tower ship that floated in the air. The wind chime did not need Fairy Lee's command as it flickered on its own accord, emitting a pleasant sound. In a daze, Pei Ling saw that it was already hanging from the corner of the ship. Fairy Lee was the first to go up. With a flick of her sleeve, she instructed coldly, "Return to the sect." Pei Ling heaved a sigh of relief. He was hoping that everyone would leave so that he could hide the essence-augmenting pill alone. However, after Pei Hongnian helped the limping Jing Jingshan up, the boat did not move. Just as Pei Ling was puzzled, Jing Jingshan noticed him and immediately turned around to scold him, "Bastard! What are you still standing there for? Get here quickly." Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Some people may look subservient. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After a while, the Black Jade Tower ship turned into a beam of light that flew out of Deer Spring City. Pei Ling, who was experiencing flight for the first time in this world, did not have the mood to appreciate the scenery around him. Instead, he stood on the deck with his head lowered, trying his best to appear more steady. Fairy Lee had already flicked her sleeves and entered the cabin before leaving the city. The remaining three looked at each other for a while. A murderous look flashed between Jing Jingshan's brows as he shouted in a deep voice, "Who gave you the guts to barge into my residence?" Pei Ling racked his brains to think for a reason. Damn it, I don't want to either, do you believe it?" Seeing that he did not answer, Jing Jingshan's eyes flashed fiercely. If it were a while ago, he would not have even asked as he would have punched him directly. However, Pei Ling was brought on the boat by his senior sister, after all. He did not know what her plans were. He thought about it and suddenly noticed something. He said, "Why did the symbol of the Rakshasa painting disappear? Was it senior sister who intervened?" Pei Ling was startled when he heard this. Only then did he realize that his cultivation level had shockingly increased by another level. He was now at the 4th level of Qi refinement. He composed himself and was about to speak when Pei Hongnian exclaimed, "The 4th level of Qi refinement." Jing Jingshan did not understand Pei Ling's background, but as the Pei family's eldest son, Pei Hongnian would know. Every time he returned home from the outer sect of the Deep Sea sect, he had the responsibility to guide his peers. How could he not know that Pei Ling was only at the 2nd level of Qi refinement when he returned home a few days ago? Judging by the time, less than a month had passed, and his junior brother had already advanced 2 levels in succession quietly. Ha! Upon hearing what Pei Hongnian said, Jing Jingshan immediately thought of something. He quickly checked the items he had on him, and his expression changed immediately. 10 bone tempering pills were missing. The bone tempering pill was meant to be used together with the bone forging art cultivation. Usually, one could only take 1 pill for each cultivation. Now that 10 pills were missing, it meant that Pei Ling had not only snuck into his room to cultivate once but at least 10 times. Pei Hongnian was only a lowly dog under him. No, the entire Pei family was like a dog in front of him. Meanwhile, Pei Ling was inconspicuous in the Pei family and did not even have the right to approach the Green Parasol compound. In the end, this kid appeared subservient on the surface. In reality, he trespassed into his residence, stole his pills, cultivated in his room, and even did it in front of the Scarlet Bone Rakshasa painting. Not once, not twice, but 10 times. At this moment, Jing Jingshan and the late Wu Tingshi had a tacit understanding. Were cultivators nowadays going to risk it all for 10 bone tempering pills? Or they, as disciples of a large sect, have stayed in the sect every single day and lived comfortably for too long, to the point of gradually losing the awareness of either moving forward or falling back without realizing it. Other than feeling shocked, his impression of Pei Ling did improve slightly. After all, the strong preyed on the weak. In Jing Jingshan's opinion, Pei Ling's action was not worth the risk to ascend from the second level of qi refinement to the fourth level of qi refinement. Still, such an unorthodox way of pursuing power was in line with the true meaning of Tao in Jing Jingshan's eyes. He's brave and young, he's ruthless to his clansmen and himself, he's from a humble background, making him easy to bribe. Jing Jingshan thought quickly. No, merely these are never enough to catch senior sister's eyes. This senior sister of his was the core disciple of the Deep Sea sect and the future saintess. Although Pei Ling was a promising talent in Jing Jingshan's eyes, how could he compare to Fairy Li? At the thought of this, Jing Jingshan withdrew his anger and looked deeply at Pei Ling before taking out a bone saber from his storage bag. The bone saber was about 4 feet long and was completely snow-white in color. There was only a bright and glistening line of blood seemingly undried in the middle of the blade. There was a diagram of a ferocious ghost with a green face and fangs carved on both sides of the handle in the shape of a person being devoured. At the instant it appeared, a round of faint wailing echoed. Pei Ling could not help but raise his guard at the sight of this. However, Jing Jingshan did not have the intention to attack. Instead, he reversed the saber and, with only 2 fingers, held on to the tip of the blade. He said slowly, "You two have contributed to arresting Wu Tingshi this time. Although I have already awarded 50 bone-tempering pills to your family clan, the 2 of you have yet to receive anything. The holy sect has always been clear about rewards and punishments. How about this? I will only use 20% of my strength. You guys come up one by one. Whoever can pull the saber from my fingers, this life-extinguishing blade will be your reward." "Thank you, senior brother Zheng." Pei Hongnian had not paid attention to Pei Ling before this. He had only just noticed that this junior's cultivation was already the same as his own. He was jealous with mixed feelings. He could not help but be overjoyed when he heard the offer. "I am deeply grateful for senior brother's generosity." He stepped forward without hesitation, grabbed the hilt of the saber with both hands, and yanked it. The blade remained still. Pei Hongnian's expression turned serious. He took a deep breath and circulated his qi and blood. He channeled all his cultivation at the 4th level of the qi refinement realm and tried his best to pull the handle of the saber again, but it did not budge. After several tries, Jing Jingshan's fingertip did not even shake a little. Pei Hongnian was ashamed and unwilling to accept this fate. He wanted to try again, but Jing Jingshan was getting impatient. "Forget it. You are not strong enough. You can back down." With that, he looked at Pei Ling. Although Pei Ling did not know why Jing Jingshan suddenly let him off and even took out the life-extinguishing blade as a reward, how could he refuse at a time like this? However, just as he was about to step forward, he suddenly shuddered. His left arm was injured by Wu Tingshi's 5-poison finger previously to the point his bones were visible. Although he got cured and felt much better after the dual cultivation, he had not fully recovered. His right hand was not injured, but his right hand was tightly clutching the essence-augmenting pill that he had just stolen from Fairy Li. What should he do? Jing Jingshan's expression darkened when he saw the hesitation. Pei Ling had previously followed the family head's orders to the main hall of the Pei residence and listened to his orders obediently. He seemed respectful and subservient then, but now, he actually dared to take his time. Could it be that he believed that he had obtained the favor of his senior sister and was deliberately taking advantage? If that was the case, this kid was nothing worth mentioning after all. How dare you, Pei Ling? Pei Hongnian was already feeling down when he saw it. He scolded, "Senior brother Zheng is rewarding you, yet you didn't come forward immediately. Does this mean that you don't like this life-extinguishing blade? What the f*ck? Even this cultivation world is playing the script of Beyond the Realm of Conscience. I'll remember this. And this trash system. I shouldn't have given this retard a 5-star review." Pei Ling cursed in his heart. The origin of the essence augmenting pill that the system had gifted was too suffocating. At this moment, he could only brace himself and reach out his left hand to grab towards the life-extinguishing blade. Right then, the surroundings dimmed suddenly. Pei Ling was startled and quickly looked around, but the sky was clear. Just as he was wondering, he realized that a faint black fog had risen on the deck. The appearance of the black fog was abrupt, and it spread rapidly. Soon, it reached the waists of the three of them, and a chill that seemed to strike straight into their souls arrived. As for Pei Ling and Pei Hongyan, their teeth could not help but chatter despite trying their best to hold it in. While the cousins were in shock, the black fog surged like waves. As if it had been summoned, it rapidly swirled towards a spot not far from the three of them, forming a black pillar of mist that was more than 100 feet tall. It was as imposing as a dragon. In the next moment, the pillar of fog collapsed as two translucent women in palatial clothes appeared. The woman on the left had beautiful hair that was tied into a high bun, and she wore a flower crown. She was beautiful and pale. The woman on the right only seemed to be around 15 or 16 years of age, and she was elegant and beautiful. She wore a jade pearls necklace, with her hair tied into two buns, while numerous dark blue butterflies fluttered around her. When their wings flapped lightly, glittering light blue sparkles sprinkled down. Their clothes were beautiful but black mist covered below their knees. The entire floating deck was covered in it. Both of them looked over, but there were no pupils in their eyes, left with only a deep black color that seemed particularly peculiar. Senior sister's ghost servants, Zheng Jingshan's pupils constricted, and he subconsciously revealed a hint of fear. He nodded and said, "Since Miss Jiaoni and Miss Wulyo are here, does senior sister have any instructions?" "My master has ordered all of you to enter your respective cabins to rest," the woman on the left said lightly. "If you need anything, you can just ring the bell in the room." Zheng Jingshan hurriedly asked, "About senior sister?" The woman on the right covered her mouth and giggled. There seemed to be a blue light flashing in her black eyes. She did not even look at him as she said softly, "Master also said that before we reach the sect, no one is allowed to go up to the top floor to disturb us unless there are some major issues." Seeing Zheng Jingshan silenced, she was satisfied. She glanced at the three of them and asked curiously, "What are all of you doing?" "Miss Wulyo, senior brother Zheng is testing us." Pei Hongyan explained the situation dejectedly. After hearing this, the two girls looked at each other, and Jiao Ni's interest peaked. "In that case, you have already failed. Now, it's your cousin's turn." Pei Hongyan smiled awkwardly. "Yes." Hearing this, Jiao and I looked at Pei Ling with a faint smile. "Sure, please continue. We'll watch the show." Pei Ling's hair stood on end from a look from that pair of deep black eyes. He hurriedly lowered his head, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. His right hand was still holding the essence augmenting pill that the servant's owner had lost. Chapter 14. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dark Bone Phantom Ship Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Pei Ling forced himself to calm down. Since these two female ghosts wanted to watch the show, they would probably not notice him after it. With this thought, he immediately decided to admit defeat after one attempt. After all, no matter how good the life-extinguishing blade was, it was not as important as his life. Besides, Pei Hongyan had been in the 4th level of qi refinement for some time. Just now, he could not move the life-extinguishing blade at all no matter what he did. Clearly, 20% of the power of the mid-stage foundation establishment realm was a world of difference compared to their current cultivation level. He had just entered the 4th level of the qi refinement realm. Why would he waste his energy? Therefore, Pei Ling stretched out his left hand and grabbed the hilt of the life-extinguishing blade, exerting his strength slightly. Zheng Jingshan frowned at the sight of this. Although he had only taken out the life-extinguishing blade to test Pei Ling's strength and not reward him sincerely, Pei Ling's cultivation level was only at the 4th level of qi refinement. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to pull the life-extinguishing blade out of his fingers with all his might, much less with one hand. And it was with his injured left arm. However, before he knew it, a force that exceeded his expectations suddenly came from the handle of the knife. The blade of the life-extinguishing blade moved slightly toward Pei Ling and almost got pulled away. Jing Jingshan was shocked as he looked at Pei Ling in a different light. Pei Ling, using an injured left arm, was already much stronger than Pei Hongnian, a disciple at the 4th level of qi refinement for a long time. No, it was impossible for a normal cultivator at the 4th stage of the qi refinement realm to have so much strength. So that was how it was. No wonder this boy could obtain senior sister's favor. He was shocked and uncertain, but he did not hesitate to apply more strength to regain control of the life-extinguishing blade again. It was not that Jing Jingshan was afraid of losing, nor was he afraid that he would really reward the life-extinguishing blade. Instead, Pei Ling was only using his injured left hand to pull out the blade. If Pei Ling succeeded, where would his dignity as the inner sect master of the Deep Sea sect go? Pei Ling did not know what was going on. He glanced at his left sleeve calmly. His wound that had just healed had ruptured, and blood had drenched his sleeve. It was a gruesome sight to see. Still, the life-extinguishing blade only came out a tiny bit. After that, it did not move an inch like a boulder. It was about time. With that thought, he couldn't care less about the pain. He took a few deep breaths to show that he was exhausted. Then, he took 2 steps back and knelt on the ground. Immortal Master Zheng, your level is beyond imagination. I'm afraid that I can't compare to you. This life-extinguishing blade is not something we are worthy of wielding. Please take it back. Upon hearing this, Jing Jingshan's expression relaxed a little. Just as he was about to speak, Jiao and I, who had claimed that she was here to watch the show, suddenly sighed and said, there can only be one useless person on the Dark Bone Phantom boat. Pei Hongnian has already occupied this spot. This young master, what are you going to do? Pei Ling's heart sank when he heard this. Indeed, the female ghost continued, why don't you let me peel off your skin nicely so I can change the old lampshade in our master's room to a new one? That's putting waste to good use, right? Holy shit. Does your master know how vicious you are? Your master did not even touch me. Pei Ling took a deep breath and clenched the essence-augmenting pill tightly in his hand. Sensing Jiao Ni's undisguised malice, he felt his hair stand on end. He had only just entered the 4th level of qi refinement. In terms of ability, he felt that he was inferior to Pei Hongnian. Pei Hongnian had already tried his best but could not pull out the life-extinguishing blade. Even if he did his best, how could he possibly change the outcome? The female ghost was out to kill him. Pei Ling was terrified. He immediately made up his mind and circulated his qi, preparing to fight to the death. Miss Wulyo suddenly said softly, sister, don't be like this. After all, young Master Pei Ling has always been in Deer Spring City. How can his abilities be compared to the disciples of the holy sect in such a desolate place? Plus, Jing Jingshan is in the middle stage of the foundation establishment. Even if he used 2 fingers and 20% of his strength, it's still too difficult for this young master. In my opinion, why don't we let Jing Jingshan restrain himself a little more and use 15% of his cultivation? Jiao and I glanced at her and saw Wu Lu smiling sweetly at her. With a thought, she said, as you wish. Hearing this, Pei Ling could not help but look at Wu Lu gratefully. Thank you, Miss Wu Lu. Although he was worried that even if Jing Jingshan only used 15% of his cultivation, he might not be able to extract it himself, no matter what, losing 5% of strength gave him some hope of survival. For a moment in his eyes, Wu Lu's pale countenance seemed amiable. No need to thank me. Wu Lu tilted her head slightly and gave him a friendly smile, you can do it, young Master Pei Ling, otherwise, you will only become a lampshade for Sister Jiao and I. Yes. Pei Ling secretly glanced at Jiao Ni and saw that this female ghost was sizing him up from head to toe with an icy gaze as if she was considering where to start skinning him. His scalp turned numb, and he hurriedly composed himself, thinking quickly about how to deal with the essence-augmenting pill. Not mentioning Wu Lu, Jiao Ni was clearly up to no good. If they discovered their master's essence-augmenting pill, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the critical moment, Pei Ling suddenly thought of something. He suddenly tore open his outer clothes and nimbly took them off. He conveniently wrapped the essence-augmenting pill inside the clothes and threw it on the deck not far away. After doing this, he endured his intense heartbeat and observed his surroundings from the corner of his eye. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that no one was paying attention to the outer clothes he had thrown on the deck. He then naturally loosened up his chi, ignoring the blood still flowing from his left arm. He stepped forward and grabbed the hilt of his saber with both hands, holding his breath. Zheng Jingshan's eyes sparkled. Of course, he could not really do as Wu Lu said to use only 15% of his strength. In fact, he believed that even with 30% of his power, if Pei Ling spared no effort, he was not sure whether he could keep the life-extinguishing blade. He was wondering whether Jiao Ni and Wu Lu's words were on their own initiative or his senior sister's decision. If it was the senior sister's intention, should he quietly increase the difficulty or let Pei Ling pass? Just as he was considering whether to adjust his strength to 40% to test the boy's limits, he suddenly saw Jiao Ni and Wu Lu's lips curl up slightly as they looked at him with their dark soulless eyes. His heart palpitated, and he immediately gave up on the idea of tampering with the test. Right then, Pei Ling channeled all his strength, circulated his chi at full speed, and jerked it back. The life-extinguishing blade only froze for a brief moment before it was pulled out of Zheng Jingshan's fingers. Pei Ling staggered back by 2 steps before he could steady himself as he looked slightly startled. So easy. He could not believe it. After all, Pei Hongnian had used all his strength earlier, but it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Although Zheng Jingshan had reduced the difficulty after Wu Liu's intervention, he was prepared to try again and again to draw the life-extinguishing blade bit by bit. He could never imagine actually succeeding in just a moment. Pei Ling held the saber in his hand and was confused for a moment before he looked at Zheng Jingshan. Zheng Jingshan had a complicated expression on his face. He looked at the life-extinguishing blade in Pei Ling's hand with a trace of reluctance. When he noticed Pei Ling's gaze, he immediately put on a straight face and said, "This life-extinguishing blade is the weapon I used back in the outer sect. Since it's in your hand now, I hope you can train diligently and not stain its good name." "Yes." Pei Ling hurriedly bowed. "Thank you for the reward, immortal master. I won't let you down." Zheng Jingshan's approval did not reassure him completely. Pei Ling then turned to Jiao Ni and Wu Lu, the 2 ghost maids, to see Jiao Ni smile at him. She covered her mouth and said, "All right, you can enter the cabin to rest. After settling you guys down, we still have to serve our master." It seemed like he had passed this test. Pei Ling discreetly wiped off his cold sweat while watching Jiao Ni lead Zheng Jingshan and Pei Hongnian into the cabin. He hurriedly rushed over to pick up his outer clothes and patted them down quietly. After confirming that the essence-augmenting pill was still inside, he breathed a sigh of relief and followed obediently. As soon as he stepped into the cabin, he felt a chill run down his spine. Fortunately, although the chill was similar to when the 2 ghost maids appeared, it was still tolerable. What entered his view was a dark pathway with no end in sight. There were dull blue lights every few steps on the 2 cabin walls. Not only did they not dispel the discomfort caused by the darkness, but they also added a spooky feel to the atmosphere. After walking for about 10 feet, doors began to appear on both sides. Those doors were drenched in a dark red color as if blood had dried up. There were many talismans drawn on them as if they were sealing something. There were a few doors that might have heard the footsteps outside. There was a muffled knocking sound coming from within, and the force was so great that it seemed possible to break through the door at any moment. There were a few more doors that looked ordinary when Jing Jingshan and Pei Hongnian passed by. However, when Pei Ling's turn came, a pair of blood-colored eyes suddenly opened on the door and stared at him with ill intent. Even a few blood-colored vines extended out like the scarlet bone Rakshasa painting, attempting to wrap around Pei Ling and drag him behind the door. Back down. It was Wu Lu who shouted. Only then did the vines unwillingly wave a few times and silently shrink back. After a while, Wu Lu opened a cabin door for Pei Ling, revealing a simple and spacious room. Pei Ling felt that the shirt at his back was already soaked in sweat. He walked in, turned around, and thanked her sincerely. "Thank you, Miss Wulyo." "No problem." Willow's dark eyes stared straight at him, but she did not intend to turn around and leave. Instead, she said softly, "Young Master Pei Ling. Can I ask you a question?" Pei Ling did not understand and said cautiously, "By all means, Mississippi. I will tell you everything I know." Wu Lu nodded with a smile and suddenly hovered in front of him. She was so close that she was almost touching the tip of his nose. Her dark eyes stared straight at Pei Ling as her extra cold fingers touched his neck. She said coldly, "Young Master Pei Ling, why does your body smell like my master?" Pei Ling's pupils constricted abruptly, and his hair stood on end. At the same time, a layer of black mist suddenly rose inside the cabin and surrounded him like water clouds, sending a chill down his spine. Chapter 15. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 14. I have a special physique. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Pei Ling was shocked as cold sweat instantly gushed out. Wu Lu tilted her head slightly, and her icy hand seemed to be caressing his cheek intimately as it moved up a little. She said softly, "Young Master Pei Ling, didn't you say that you would tell me everything? Why aren't you answering?" As she spoke, her fingertip touched the space between Pei Ling's eyebrows, and a chill struck through his flesh to the marrow of his bones. She said sweetly, "Do you want me to be like Sister Jiaoni and turn you into a lampshade, extract your soul and refine it into a lamp wick? Only then will you tell me." Pei Ling wanted to explain himself, but he could barely manage to say a word before he got suppressed by an invisible pressure to the point that he could not move. He could only watch as the fingertip of Wu Lu moved slowly, going straight down from the middle of his eyebrows. This female ghost had extremely long black nails that were incomparably sharp. There was a faint blue glow on its surface. Although it did not really slice down, the feeling that it would peel off his skin in the next moment was real. His heart palpitated, but he could not speak. Just then, Wu Lu suddenly chuckled as her voice turned soft. Do you know why Master did not kill you on the spot previously?" "What?" Pei Ling's heart skipped a beat. If not for the fact that he was currently confined, he would have cried out in surprise. This ghost knew. She actually knew everything. Then why didn't they come out to save their master previously? Or is it because the dark bone phantom ship did not appear previously, so they could not come out? Wu Lu was calm and unruffled as she admired his shocked expression. The curve of her lips became more and more obvious. "Interesting. This is really interesting. The soul suppression bell's demon sound curse is something that even a core formation stage cultivator like Luo Qiao can't resist. But you are a mere 4th level Qi refinement cultivator, yet you're acting as if nothing had happened. Not just our master is interested in you, even the pitiful people like us who are imprisoned in the soul suppression bell are curious about you." As she spoke, her stretched finger pressed against Pei Ling's chest and said with a smile, "Tell me, what secrets do you have? How is the stability of your divine spirit better than Luo Qiao's?" "Miss Wulyo," at this time, Pei Ling could finally speak. His face filled with fear, but an idea flashed through his mind. He stammered, maybe it's my physique. I guess it might be a little special." Wu Lu, who had been absent-mindedly scratching his clothes, stopped. She looked up. Oh. When I got ordered by Immortal Master Zheng to enter the Yuanlao mountain to search for Wu Tingxi, he once said that I have a supreme-grade iron bone. He even asked me if I had consumed any natural treasures. Pei Ling forced himself to calm down and said, however, with my background, I have never even consumed a bone-tempering pill in the past. How could I have come into contact with any natural treasures? So Wu Tingxi speculated that my physique might be special. I'm only from Deer Spring City with limited knowledge, and I'm not too sure of this. Your physique. Wu Lu frowned slightly and murmured to herself, his divine spirit is especially stable, and he's good at body tempering. I don't think there's anyone with such a physique in the records of the holy sect. She thought for a while, then her eyes suddenly brightened. She clapped her hands and said, I know. The blue glow in the female ghost's dark eyes brightened up instantly. It looked ghastly as she said sinisterly, an unknown physique that's so strong and special. You're really worth bringing back to the holy sect for research. Before Pei Ling could react, Wu Lu had already circled him like a fish. She suddenly pulled up his left sleeve to look at the wound and revealed a disappointed look. Although this wound heals quickly, it's much inferior to the myriad-wood rejuvenating body that the holy sect had obtained years ago. Her interest piqued. As she pulled open Pei Ling's upper clothes to check on his injuries, she said, at the time, the holy sect had put in a lot of effort to study that myriad-wood rejuvenating body. In the beginning, they only scratched some skin and muscles. When they saw that person instantly recover to his original state, they began, as for the last step. Don't worry. Although my master isn't that elder's disciple, she did learn a few saber techniques from that elder. If she peels off your skin, it will most definitely look perfect. It's just that your healing speed is too slow. I'm afraid you can't be like that person with the myriad-wood rejuvenation body. Pei Ling's facial muscles twitched rapidly. What special physique did he have? The only special thing was that there was a system. The so-called powerful divine soul and good body tempering were all given by external modifications. If he really fell into a situation where he was deeply researched, according to the means of this demonic sect, Pei Ling was afraid that he would not even be able to survive the first stage. What the heck, so after working hard for so long, he was still going to die. He forced a smile and said, Lady Wulyo is right. I don't have the myriad-wood rejuvenation body. Not to mention being hit dozens of times in a row, I can't even take a few cuts to my skin and muscles, it's okay. Your forte should be in the divine spirit, Wu Lu said gleefully. Speaking of it, the holy sect has also encountered a type of physique that is especially strong in the divine spirit. They are a pair of naturally telepathic twins. That time, it even alarmed a grand elder of the holy sect who had been in seclusion for a long time to extract their spirit personally. She then casually mentioned a few other unique physiques. Without exception, the outcome of falling into the hands of the deep-sea sect for him was that from his body to spirit, he would become disposed of in a way too horrible to describe. The more Pei Ling listened, the paler his face became. Just as he was considering whether he should just take the opportunity to commit suicide and suffer less, Wu Lu's expression suddenly sank as she cursed, Wu Tingxi that bastard. He knew that your physique is special, a valuable material, but he still dared to use the 5 poison finger to injure you. If he's still alive, I will personally burn his soul in the lamp for 300 years. Suddenly, she raised his hand and slapped the back of Pei Ling's neck. Pei Ling only felt his vision go dark, and he knew nothing else. After an unknown period of time, he woke up groggily. He felt that his muscles were incomparably sore as if he had been lying down for a long time. However, as he looked around, he realized that he was still in the cabin of the dark bone phantom ship. Pei Ling was puzzled. He struggled to get up and quickly checked himself, discovering that the injuries of the 5 poison finger had fully healed. Plus, he had his clothes changed and seemed to have taken a shower. What made his scalp numb was that the essence-augmenting pill was still safely in his possession. What is going on? He thought for a moment, loosened up his limbs, and walked to the back of the door. He held his breath and focused. After a while, seeing that it was quiet inside out, he carefully opened the door slightly. After checking that no one was along the corridor, Pei Ling tiptoed out and knocked on Pei Hongnian's door. Pei Hongnian came over to open the door quickly. When he saw him, his expression darkened. He asked suspiciously, "What have you been doing in your room for the past 2 weeks? Why didn't you answer when I knocked? Have you been cultivating?" 2 weeks. Pei Ling was startled. It's already been half a month. It seems like you're really cultivating to the point of forgetting yourself and losing track of time. Pei Hongnian was both envious and jealous. He looked around to see that there was no one around and could not help but ask softly, "How many of the bone-tempering pills you stole from senior brother Jing do you have left?" Pei Ling did not have the heart to bother answering the question. He asked anxiously, "How much longer until we reach the deep sea sect?" "We are entering the mountain soon," Pei Hongnian said casually. "But really, how many bone-tempering pills do you have left? How about selling them to me? We're all from the same clan." Before he could finish, Pei Ling turned around and left without even greeting him. Pei Ling still remembered what Wu Lu had said before he fainted. How could he be in the mood to waste his breath on Pei Hongnian now? He had to think of a solution quickly. As soon as he returned to his cabin, Pei Ling closed the door. When he turned around, his face turned white. Not far away at the round table, a woman wearing a veiled hat and a black veil dress that stretched to the ground was sitting there. It was Fairy Li. Chapter 16. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 15. Deep Sea Sect Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Pei Ling felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He stood stiffly by the door and dared not to breathe. Fairy Li's expression could not be seen through the veil hat, and the room became silent for a moment. Suddenly, Fairy Li raised her hand and threw something at him. Pei Ling was startled as he quickly swatted it away. However, at this moment, a system notification that he had not heard for a long time sounded. Ding dong. An unknown saber technique is being recorded. He looked at the booklet that he had knocked to the ground, then looked at Fairy Li, who was sitting on the spot. He had the urge to die on the spot. Master it in 10 days. Otherwise, die. Fairy Li said coldly. With a flick of her sleeve, her entire body shattered like bubbles and disappeared immediately. After she left for a while, Pei Ling walked over to pick up the booklet in embarrassment. The cover was written with the words, "Blood Malevolence Saber Art," in cloud seal characters. When he saw these ancient characters, his expression became solemn instantly. The Pei clan only had more than 100 cloud seal characters in the library. In other words, opening the booklet and flipping through it, Pei Ling sighed. Indeed, he did not know most of the words on this saber technique, let alone understand it. Fortunately, the system said, "Ding dong. The unknown saber technique has been recorded. Host, please name it. Blood Malevolence Saber Art." It was rare for Pei Ling to find the system pleasing to the eye. However, after some thought, he gave up on the idea of letting the system cultivate immediately. After all, the Dark Bone Phantom ship was too dangerous. If this retard system caused any more trouble, he did not even dare to imagine his fate. Thus, Pei Ling closed the booklet and hid it in his bosom. At this time, he felt the entire ship tremble slightly. Not long later, Pei Hongnian came over and knocked on the door. "We have arrived at the dust-severing square. Quickly pack your things and go to the deck. Better not make Fairy Li wait." Previously, Pei Ling had prepared his belongings to escape from his home. However, after being controlled by the system to rush to the Green Parasol compound and end up here, he did not bring anything except the 7 ultimate soul-subduing powder that he already used. Now, other than the clothes on his body, he only had an essence-augmenting pill, a blood-malevolent saber art, and a life-extinguishing blade. The essence-augmenting pill and the blood-malevolent saber art were both in his arms. He went in to get the life-extinguishing saber and followed Pei Hongnian to the deck. There was no Jiao Enai or Wu Lu by his side the entire way, but the doors on both sides of the passageway were exceptionally quiet. After leaving the cabin, Pei Ling glanced around and could not help but gasp. It was an unimaginable vast sea of clouds. The sea of clouds was not calm. Waves roiled angrily, and numerous uneven mountains concealed within the cloud were like reefs scattered all over the sea of clouds. Apart from the mountains, there were many rare and fascinating beasts that Pei Ling had never heard or seen before soaring freely among the clouds. There was especially a mountain surrounded by verdant forest, which had a faint glow of flames at the top. The enormous figure appeared through the clouds, and merely its mountain tip was sufficient to stir the sea of clouds in the surroundings of the mountain to the point it seemed to be boiling and surging. The dark-boned phantom ship was currently flying over this endless sea of clouds. After a while, it drove into a mountain peak that was surrounded faintly by other mountains. This mountain was shorter than several of the surrounding peaks. The top was flat as if someone had forcefully shaved off a portion of it to form an extremely large square. At this moment, there were many transportations like flying boats rising and falling. However, when they saw the dark-boned phantom ship, they hurriedly gave way. This is the dust-severing platform. Pei Hongnian had entered the sect for years and was already used to the scenery of the deep-sea sect. Thus, he was not as shocked as Pei Ling. He casually introduced, new disciples will enter the sect from here. From here on, there will be differences between immortals and mortals. The sect named it Dust-Severing Square because it hoped that we can sever all the thoughts of the mortal world and advance bravely, parting forever with the dust from the mortal world. After he said this, he suddenly realized something and frowned. Oh yes, I wonder what senior brother Zheng has arranged for you. At the same time, Jing Jingshan was respectfully asking for instructions from the railings on the third floor of the dark-boned phantom ship. Senior sister, we have arrived at the sect, but what should we do with Pei Ling? Fairy Li's black dress fluttered as she stood not far from him with her hands behind her back. She replied briefly in a cold tone, let him enter the outer sect. Understood. Jing Jingshan nodded and then transmitted his voice to Pei Hongnian. Bring Pei Ling to the outer sect. Shortly after, the dark-boned phantom ship soared into the sky again and shot into the depths of the sea of clouds. Pei Ling, who got left on the square, could not help but look in that direction for a while. He asked, is that the location of the inner sect? It seems so far. Pei Hongnian was not in a good mood. He ignored him and said, follow me. He brought Pei Ling to a two-story building by the square without hassle. After they entered, they saw that it was empty. In the middle of the simple furnishings was a wrinkled old lady with white hair. She held a wine pot in her hand and leaned against a reclining chair lethargically while she drank from it. When she heard that someone had entered, she did not have the intention to move. It was Pei Hongnian who stepped forward and smiled apologetically. Senior, Inner Sect Branch Master Jing Jingshan requested me to enter the outer sect with my junior brother, Pei Ling. These juniors are always finding trouble for me. The old lady's voice was hoarse as she sighed. She did not make things difficult for them as she slowly sat up, revealing a wrinkled face. However, her eyes seemed to be enchanted, which was impossible to look away from. The two cousins could not help but become absent-minded as they looked at her in a daze, unable to speak. The old woman sized them up for a moment and said lightly, come with me. Pei Ling and Pei Hongnian were jolted awake. When they came to their senses, their expressions were somewhat unnatural. They followed the old lady out of the building and saw another building in the back. It did not appear large on the outside, but after entering, the interior was surprisingly spacious. Countless candlesticks were floating in the air. Every candlestick was burning with a blood flame of varying heights and sizes. The size of the blood flame was also different. The smallest was the size of a green bean, and the largest was suspended high in the air like a sun which Pei Ling could not look at directly, much less estimate its size. From the corner of his eye, he could already feel the terrifying power contained in it. Further away were over 100 portraits. All of them were vivid and lifelike, including men, women, old, and young. There were even some that did not seem to be normal human bodies. The old lady waved her hand, and a candlestick flew over from somewhere. It was no different from the other floating candlesticks. She said lightly, "Since you are a member of the Pei family and have Jing Jingshan's backing, there's no need to waste time on those background checks. Go and pay your respects to the ancestral master and bring a drop of blood here. After you light this life soul candle, you will be a member of the Deep Sea sect from here on." Pei Ling had zero intentions to enter this sort of demonic sect. However, at this point, he could not escape far away. He could only bite the bullet and step forward. According to the old lady's guidance, he separately kowtowed to the founder, the successive founders, the current Grand Elder, and the current sect master. After that, he would slice his fingertip open and force out a drop of blood. The blood landed on the candlestick and immediately turned into a flame. It was slightly bigger than a green bean and was about the size of a soybean. The old lady asked for Pei Ling's name, birth date, and Botsi 1. Rows of details appeared under the candlestick. In the end, a line indicating the date Pei Ling entered the Deep Sea sect surfaced. Immediately, the candlestick broke free from the old lady's hand and flew into the air like a ray of light, blending into the many candlesticks. Since you've entered the holy sect, the old woman glanced at him and ignored him. She waved Pei Ling in front of her and said weakly, "You should be careful with your words and actions in the future and abide by the sect rules. Especially with your background, if you break the rules, the consequences will be unimaginable, understand?" Pei Ling said carefully, "Senior. May I ask what are the sect rules of the Deep Sea sect, the holy sect?" The old woman said, "That's too much for me to tell you. Go back and have a look yourself." With that, she pulled out a booklet that was 3 inches thick from her back and stuffed it into his hand. She said earnestly, "You must remember this from the beginning to the end. Remember, the holy sect is not like your family. The sect rules are strict and ruthless. Understood?" Pei Ling's apprehension subsided when he heard this. As the saying went, one was not afraid of having too many rules, but he would be if there were none. To a person like him who followed his Go mantra, it was all right to have many rules. As long as he had something to rely on, it would give him a greater sense of security. He was only afraid that everyone would do as they pleased and be unrestrained, and the calamities from the heavens would descend at any time. He thanked the old lady gratefully and held the sect rulebook tightly to his chest. With such thickness and number of pages, it was obvious how detailed the Deep Sea sect's considerations were. He felt at ease almost instantly. Chapter 17. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 16. Accident Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After leaving the building, Pei Hongnian could not help but laugh when he saw that Pei Ling treated the sect rulebook as a treasure. "Senior, are these sect rules only for show?" His attitude caused Pei Ling's heart to skip a beat, and he hurriedly asked. Pei Hongnian gave a strange look. How is that possible? The holy sect had painstakingly compiled so many rules and regulations. How could they be just for show? He patted Pei Ling's shoulder. "It's just that, Sai, you'll know after you read it anyway." Without giving Pei Ling a chance to ask more questions, Pei Hongnian pointed to a spot not far away. "After you light up the life soul candle, you are already an outer sect disciple of the holy sect. The next step is to go to the General Affairs Hall to obtain your clothes and nameplates. Let's walk faster. After all, the General Affairs Hall does not allow outsiders to stay overnight." After night falls, anyone not from the General Affairs Hall caught loitering there will be treated as violating the sect rules. That is not a joke. Pei Ling was startled when he heard this and hurriedly said, "Okay." The cousins quickened their steps and arrived at the door of the General Affairs Hall. It occupied a vast area and was built tall and lofty. Plants were around, and many people were coming and going. The most eye-catching thing was that two ghosts were floating by the door. Both were burly, 10-foot tall men wearing armor, with one holding a hammer and the other holding a saber. There was no expression on their pale faces, only their cold black eyes watching the crowd. It reminded Pei Ling of Jiao Ni and Wu Lu when he saw them, and his face could not help but twitch. He did not dare to look further as he followed closely behind Pei Hongnian. It was a spacious hall that was bustling with activity. However, everyone seemed to be in a hurry, seemingly very busy. Pei Hongnian did not have any time to waste. He strode to a corner, and after finding a disciple in charge to explain the situation, the other party quickly took out a set of outer sect disciples' clothes, a fist-size storage bag, and a finger bone. His clothes and storage bag were fine, but the finger bone seemed realistic. They were warm to touch and could even move slightly. It was a harrowing feeling. "This is your nameplate." Pei Hongnian picked up the finger bone and pointed to the word Pei Ling, which got engraved at some point in time. He instructed solemnly, "This is the most important thing here. You must not lose it at all times. After all, the sect spirits recognize the nameplate but not the person. If you trespass in some places without a nameplate, you will die in vain." Pei Ling could not help but be serious as he hurriedly hid it in his bosom. "All right, it's getting late." After leaving the hall, Pei Hongnian looked up at the sky and said, "Let's find a place for you to stay first." As he spoke, he carefully took out a 2-inch long paper boat from his sleeve, which looked like what an ordinary child folded for fun. However, when he threw it in front of him, the paper boat rapidly grew in size. In 2 seconds, it had transformed into the size of a civilian black awning boat. After Pei Hongnian entered the boat with Pei Ling, he formed hand seals, and the paper boat left the ground slowly, floating away from the General Affairs Hall and flying towards a skinny mountain peak not far away. The speed and stability of this paper boat were naturally worlds apart from the Dark Bone Phantom ship. They were incomparable. However, back when Pei Ling was on the Dark Bone Phantom ship, he simply did not have the mood or the chance to admire the scenery. Now, although the limit of 10 days was still in his head, Pei Ling was not afraid at all with the system's help. He finally had the mood to look around. "Senior, what is it like under the sea of clouds?" Pei Ling admired the torrential sea of clouds for a while and could not help but point below and ask, "What are these places?" Pei Hongnian glanced at him with a strange expression. "If you're that interested, can't you go and take a look for yourself in the future?" Pei Ling sensed something amiss and laughed dryly to change the topic. "Right, senior, does the mountain we're going next have a name?" "What's it called?" Pei Hongnian smiled strangely and was about to answer when a phoenix suddenly rushed out from the side and recklessly crashed into the paper boat. "My boat." Pei Hongnian's expression changed instantly. As he formed hand seals to stabilize the paper boat that had lost its stability due to the sudden attack, he shouted, "Whose phoenix is this? Why is it so reckless?" The phoenix seemed to be a little dizzy from the impact. After shaking its head, it flapped its wings and disappeared into the clouds at an extraordinary speed. It came and left rapidly. If not for the fact that the paper boat had a clear hull, it would simply make one wonder if the incident had really happened. Pei Ling's heart palpitated as he said, "Brother, are these birds usually so headless?" He was beginning to think that Pei Hongnian's paper boat was not too bad. Now, he realized that the paper boat was only a paper boat after all. It was too unsafe. Pei Hongnian did not look happy as he said, "I wonder how those pieces of trash from Beast Taming Peak trained these feathered beasts." Suddenly, the ship shook again. The cousins turned around instinctively and were shocked to find that the phoenix had returned. This time, it was even more cunning than before. It secretly hid nearby before the brazen attack, destroying another portion of the paper boat. Damn it! Pei Hongnian's expression changed at the sight of this. He was flustered. Who's targeting me on purpose? He looked around and saw that there was only the churning sea of clouds nearby. After the phoenix attacked, it went into hiding again. Even with Pei Hongnian's cultivation level, he could not find any traces of the other party at the moment. Senior, can't this go any faster? Pei Ling's heart raced as he watched. After all, although he was at the 4th level of the Qi refinement realm, he could not fly. Currently, they were still a distance away from the mountain peak in front of him. If anything happened to the paper boat, he did not know what Pei Hongnian could do. In any case, he could only fall. Bastard! If I could be quick, why would I go so slow? Pei Hongnian's face was ashen as he shouted, "You!" Before he could finish, the ship shook violently again. It was that phoenix again. This time, it even pecked a few more times after the impact before flapping away. Pei Hongnian's eyes widened as he looked at the battered paper boat. However, all these years he had trained in the deep-sea sect was not in vain. At crucial moments, he was not without decision-making abilities. He immediately thought for a moment with a serious look before shouting, "Pei Ling, sit tight." Without waiting for Pei Ling to speak, he hurriedly formed a few hand seals. The paper boat ignored its injuries and accelerated instantly, charging towards the mountain peak in front. The phoenix, which was hiding leisurely, was startled at the sight of this. It flapped its wings to chase after the boat immediately. During this process, the phoenix relied on its speed advantage to attack the paper boat frequently, as if it had a deep hatred. Soon, the paper boat began to totter. Pei Ling could even hear the sounds of the paper boat beginning to fall apart. He was apprehensive, but there was nothing he could do at the moment as he could only watch the paper boat get ripped apart as it went through a forest. Pei Ling and Pei Hongnian were thrown high into the air by a wave of air and began to drop heavily. They broke countless tree branches and leaves along the way and finally fell hard on the soft forest ground. Tui, ah tui, tui, cough tui, Pei Ling was in a sorry state. He coughed as he got up from the ground. The first thing he did was to check his belongings, especially his nameplate. Just as he was heaving a sigh of relief when he found nothing missing, he heard a series of messy footsteps coming from afar. Chapter 18 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 17 Never expected my senior to be. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, senior sister son, it's right in front. Pei Ling was bewildered. He hurriedly grabbed the life-extinguishing blade and hid behind a nearby tree. Then, he heard a person shout anxiously, "We must catch that trash, Pei Hongnian, this time." That's right. He must apologize to our senior sister properly. Isn't it too easy on him to apologize? I must get him to take out the subsidy from the Pei family and buy that moon dress for senior sister. A commotion erupted as a group of 5 to 6 people appeared in Pei Ling's line of sight. They were young outer sect disciples who were around 20 years old, surrounding a girl in pink. The girl had a good figure and was rather pretty. She was delicately dressed, but she seemed haughty. "Junior sister Yinglan, it's you." Before Pei Ling could decide how to deal with the situation, Pei Hongnian had already crawled up from the ground as he walked up to her with a sad face. "Why did you let that phoenix attack my paper boat? You knew that I bought a talisman artifact for you with all the spirit stones I have saved over the years. This paper boat was because my mother scrimped and saved for an entire year in the clan to hide 50 spirit stones secretly and," before he could finish, Sun Yinglan raised her hand and slapped him. Pei Ling, the people who came with Sun Yinglan clapped and cheered, even urging Sun Yinglan to hit him a few more times. Pei Hongnian was not angry after being slapped in public. Instead, he said sorrowfully, you always treat me like this. You got the chance to go out with senior brother Zheng from the inner sect to handle affairs. And on your way back, you even sat on the core disciple, Fairy Li's dark-bone phantom ship. Why didn't you bring me along? Sun Yinglan interrupted him with an unruly look. I don't have a place in your heart at all. It's not like that, Sun Yinglan interrupted him again. You said that you liked me and that you could do anything for me. But what happened in the end? When you had the chance to get close to the inner sect senior brother, and when you had the opportunity to meet Fairy Li, you only thought of yourself. I only vent my anger on your paper boat even though I'm so mad at you. And what about you? A mere paper boat worth 50 spirit stones is more important than me in your eyes. You ungrateful thing. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. She could not help but wave her hand to slap Pei Hongnian again. It was just that before she could hit Pei Hongnian's face this time, someone grabbed her wrist from the side tightly. Pei Ling looked at Pei Hongnian speechlessly, then he said to Sun Yinglan, my senior has bought you talisman artifacts after all these years of saving up, is that not good enough? And you're not even married into the Pei family. Isn't your behavior too ugly? Although he did not have a close relationship with Pei Hongnian, and this brother of his had even tried to obstruct him on the dark-bone phantom ship, he was still a newcomer and needed Pei Hongnian's help to find a place to stay. He did not have the time to watch a gold digger playing around. Sun Yinglan was also at the 4th stage of qi refinement but could not move when she tried to struggle free. Her expression changed slightly as she looked at Pei Hongnian. Who is he? Are you going to watch your people bully me like this? Pei Ling, let go of her now. Pei Hongnian did not disappoint her and immediately berated, you must not be rude to junior sister Yinglan. Then, she said to Sun Yinglan in a fawning manner, this is my family's younger cousin. He's young and insensible. Junior sister Yinglan, don't lower yourself to his level. What the F***ck, how come I've never seen senior lick boots like this in the family? Pei Ling released her hand, and Sun Yinglan's eyes flashed sharply. Her fingers moved as she wanted to slap him too. However, when Sun Yinglan met Pei Ling's cold stare, she remembered how this person had spoken and his nonchalant attitude towards her. She felt a little scared and did not dare to touch him. Instead, she flared up at Pei Hongnian. As the Pei family's eldest son, you can't even control a junior from the branch family. You're doing it on purpose. Pei Ling stood by the side patiently and watched Pei Hongnian humble himself for a long time. In the end, he promised not to cultivate for the next month so he could concentrate on drawing talismans for Sun Yinglan, barely settling the matter. Pei Ling started to understand why he had already caught up to his cousin's cultivation level. Pei Hongnian had obvious talent and was sent to the Deep Sea sect by the Pei family long ago. Every year, the family would think of ways to save up resources to support his cultivation, but damn, this idiot is hopeless. If you follow this direction out of the forest, you'll see a path. Walk along that and head up the mountain, and you'll find the hall of residence of this shady Sephora Peak. You can just choose a place to stay when you get there. Pei Hongnian coaxed Sun Yinglan and was no longer in the mood to bother about his cousin. He casually told him, I'm staying in the area south of the peak. There's a large pagoda tree in the courtyard. If you have anything, look for me again. I'm sending junior sister Yinglan back first. Pei Ling, who was already impatiently waiting, turned around and left without needing any more reminders. After walking for some distance, he could still hear Sun Yinglan intentionally pouting. I don't like your cousin. You're not allowed to help him in the future. Pei Hongnian. Alright, anything for you. Pei Ling, yep, you're really hopeless. After a while, he found the hall. After the male disciple in charge heard the purpose of his arrival, he first sized him up from head to toe. Afterward, he brought him to a large sand table in the inner room and said with a smile, Junior brother, now is not the season for new disciples to enter the sect. Although there are residences available, there are not many choices. You look quite talented. And I guess ordinary residences won't suit you as it would delay junior brother's cultivation due to insufficient spiritual energy. Thank you, senior brother. Pei Ling would naturally want to stay in a better place, but he did not have a single spirit stone in his pocket right now, so he could only pretend not to understand the other party's hints. I'm from a poor family, so I'm fine with a place to stay. The male disciple did not give up and asked, not a single spirit stone. Some places might seem similar, but you'll only know the difference after staying here for a long time. I'm not bragging, but the entire shady Sephora Peak, why don't you lend me a spirit stone, senior brother? Pei Ling thought for a moment and said. I promise that in the future, I will definitely, then you can stay here. You can use your nameplate to remove the restriction after you go over there. The male disciple pointed to a spot on the sand table without a word and modified Pei Ling's nameplate through hand seals. Alright, that's it. If there's nothing else, you may leave. Judging from his senior brother's attitude, Pei Ling was mentally prepared to find himself in a dilapidated house for himself. Unexpectedly, when he arrived at the place, although it was quite a distance away from the other housings, the surrounding greenery was lush, a stream was running in front of the door, bees buzzed busily, and butterflies danced elegantly. It was beautiful scenery. As for the house, it was clean and tidy. Am I too quick to judge? Or is the Deep Sea sect so rich and imposing that this is the standard of their worst residence? Pei Ling was a little puzzled, but he could not be bothered to think too much about it. He took out the nameplate, unlocked the restriction, and walked in. He saw that the interior was beautifully decorated. From the way things were placed, 3 people were already living here, and none of them were around. He walked around for a while and could not wait to take out the sect rulebook. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 18. Discussing the self-discipline of demon sect disciples. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The beginning of the sect rules gave a brief introduction of the sect's background. The old lady mentioned this previously, so Pei Ling skipped it and read about the benefits of being an outer sect disciple. Apart from the things he received from the General Affairs Hall, he could also choose a technique for free during his cultivation. For example, artifacts forging, pill refinement, talisman drawing, spirit herbs, beast taming, etc. He would need to attend those classes at the corresponding mountain peak. As for the cultivation techniques, the outer sect disciples also cultivated the bone forging art, which was no different from the ones passed down from the Pei family's ancestors. It was just that every half a month, there would be a foundation establishment cultivator explaining the key pointers of cultivating in the various peaks. When the time came, disciples could attend and listen. He was currently on a mountain called Shady Sephora Peak, one of the outer sect's peaks. Every peak had a hall of residence in charge of their operations. In addition to arranging for accommodation, the hall of residence also had a magic pavilion that hid many cultivation techniques and dharma spells that the Deep Sea sect had prepared for outer sect disciples. The bone forging art was also among them, but other than that, everything else required spirit stones to purchase. There was also the 100 Treasures Pavilion. It provided talisman artifacts, talismans, pills, etc., for cultivation and fighting purposes all year round. In addition to collecting spirit stones, disciples could also use the finished products or materials to trade after valuation. The last was the spirit gathering array formation. It was set up by an elder who was good at array formations in the inner sect during the construction of the mountain. With the help of the terrain of Shady Sephora Peak, it could connect with the stars and link to the earth. Under the premise that it did not affect the normal cultivation of the disciples, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was gathered to the greatest extent. It was the ideal cultivation destination in the mountains. However, the sect rules reminded that the cost of this place was high, and it was not recommended for daily use. It was better to use it during a breakthrough. Pei Ling scanned through it and finally saw the main contents of the sect rules. He took a deep breath and read with anticipation. The words were in black and white. Our sect strictly prohibits private fights between disciples. Violation of this rule, no matter the reason, will result in a fine for the one who makes the first move. Depending on the situation, labor disciples will be fined not less than 30 low-grade spirit stones, up to 100. Outer sect disciples will be fined not less than 100 low-grade spirit stones, up to 300. Inner sect disciples will be fined not less than 30 middle-grade spirit stones, up to 100. The punishment is spirit stones just by making a move. Regardless of the reason. Pei Ling immediately felt a lingering fear. Holy shit, if I had known earlier, I would never have touched that girl. She wouldn't have reported me, would she? He hurriedly looked down and saw that the sect's rules were incredibly detailed, stipulating some daily punishments like finding trouble, stealing, insulting, and so on. They could all resolve with spirit stones. In the end, the highlight came. In the case when the attacked disciple gets handicapped. Depending on the situation, labor disciples will be fined not less than 200 low-grade spirit stones, up to 500. Outer sect disciples will be fined not less than 2,000 low-grade spirit stones, up to 5,000. Inner sect disciples. Pei Ling's expression could not help but change. The only punishment is to pay up spirit stones. There are no other punishments. Subsequently, his face turned paler the more he read. Not only could the matter of a fellow crippled disciple be resolved by spirit stones, but even killing a fellow disciple would only increase the fine. The rules even relaxed the deadline for paying the fine. You have to pay up for small matters within 10 days, within a month if you crippled someone. As for causing death, such things would become settled after you pay the fine within 3 months. In short, the holy sect did have many detailed rules and regulations. However, as long as you had enough spirit stones, any violation could become resolved simply with spirit stones. The only real punishment was if one could not pay the fine after the deadline. It was until then that the Deep Sea sect finally changed their greedy attitude, revealing the style of a true powerhouse of the demonic path. Those with ordinary physical bodies would turn into fertilizer at the spirit plant peak. Those with powerful physical bodies would become supplementary material for the weapon forging peak, their blood essence, soul, internal organs, etc. Everything was arranged to perfection to ensure that the holy sect would not suffer a loss. What the F***ck, the sense of security that Pei Ling had when he first received the sect rules vanished into thin air. What replaced it was a deep sense of fear. He finally understood why the old lady had advised him to be careful in the sect. He did not even have a single spirit stone. According to the rules, he did not even have the right to scold anyone. After all, an outer sect disciple could only curse at their fellow sect disciple for the price of at least 3 low-grade spirit stones. Closing the book with trembling hands, Pei Ling thought of the various cruel acts of the Deep Sea sect disciples he had heard of in the past. He suddenly suspected that the reason why those disciples went on massacres was not that they became ferocious and irritable from cultivating the devil arts, but because they had no money. Therefore, they find an excuse before destroying a family for looting. After all, under these kinds of rules, obtaining spirit stones had to be the top priority. Just as Pei Ling's heart palpitated, there was movement outside. He hurriedly stood up and walked to the window to take a look. He saw the restrictions unlocked, and 3 people of different heights entered together. They saw each other through the window, and the shortest one frowned slightly. "Who are you? Why are you here, Chengyan?" The person in the middle pressed down on his shoulder, his gaze sweeping past the life-extinguishing blade not far from Pei Ling. His pupils contracted while he indicated for his companion to calm down. He smiled at Pei Ling and said, "May I ask who this junior brother is?" "Greetings, senior brothers." Pei Ling composed himself and cupped his fists. "I'm Pei Ling, a new outer sect disciple." Pei Ling. That person was a little surprised. Now isn't the time for new disciples to come in. How did you get in? He introduced himself, "I'm Li Siguang, currently at the 4th level of Qi refinement. He then pointed at his two companions, one tall and one short. They are Zhou Yi and Miao Qingyan, and their cultivation levels are at the 4th level of Qi refinement and the 5th level of Qi refinement. Pei Ling saw that their attitudes were still considered calm and felt slightly at ease. He said, it was the arrangement of the inner sect master, senior brother Jingshan. Previously, the core disciple, Fairy Li, brought senior brother Zheng and my brother, Pei Hongyan, to Deer Spring City for a mission. After I happened to see them, they brought me to the holy sect. It was also under senior brother Zheng's arrangement that I entered the holy sect. Oh, I know. It's about Elder Luo. When Li Siguang heard this, his gaze flickered. He exchanged glances with Zhou Yi, but Miao Qingyan blurted out, but Fairy Li is one thing, but why is that trash Jingshan worthy of the method to become a nascent soul? Pei Ling could not help but be startled. Jingshan's status in the Deep Sea sect seemed to be different from what he imagined. Junior brother, please don't blame us. Qingyan has an elder brother who is also in the inner sect. He's one of the 13 faction leaders of the inner sect like senior brother Zheng, and they have always had some conflicts. Li Siguang noticed Pei Ling's expression as he smiled to comfort him. Qingyan is young and impulsive, and he doesn't mean what he says. Junior brother, please don't take it to heart. Senior brother, don't worry. I'm not a person who likes to talk too much. Pei Ling was relieved, and he heard Li Siguang say, Junior brother has just arrived. I wonder if there are any inconveniences. Let me be honest, my grandfather, Li Ping, is one of the outer sect elders. From top to bottom of this shady Sephora peak, he can settle small matters with a word. Zhou Yi added, my sister is one of the core disciples. Since junior brother is familiar with Fairy Li, you will be one of us from here onwards. Pei Ling's heart palpitated. These two seemed to be probing his relationship with Fairy Li. Chapter 20 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 19 Malicious Intentions Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. It was just that without Fairy Li's permission, Pei Ling did not dare to act in her name. Indeed, Pei Hongyan said that Jingshan instructed him to get Pei Ling into the Deep Sea sect through a voice transmission. However, Fairy Li had asked Pei Ling to master the demonic blood malevolence art within 10 days before the ship arrived at the dust-severing square. If she did not intend to keep him in the sect, why did she only tell him then? It meant that letting Pei Ling enter the sect was Fairy Li's idea. However, letting Jingshan give the instruction was likely because she did not want to be associated with him on the surface. Pei Ling did not dare to provoke Fairy Li's anger at this time. He immediately said, Senior brother Zhou, you are mistaken. I come from a humble background. How can I be qualified to be familiar with Fairy Li? I'm just lucky that senior brother Zheng did not abandon me. Junior brother, why are you belittling yourself? When Li Siguang heard this, his smile remained, and he said, everyone knows that senior brother Zheng has always been respectful to Fairy Li. When he's outside, if not for Fairy Li's permission, why would he dare to bring you back? Perhaps this is because Fairy Li lived in my family's guest house for a few days, so when senior brother Zheng brought me along, she did not mind. Pei Ling denied. But it was senior brother Zheng who instructed me to enter the sect. When Li Siguang heard this, his expression was slightly subtle. He suddenly pointed at the life-extinguishing blade and said, Junior brother, doesn't this blade seem a little familiar? Pei Ling did not hide it. This was gifted to me by senior brother Zheng. It's indeed the life-extinguishing blade. Miao Qingyan's gaze kept drifting over just now. At this moment, he could not help but say, back then, Jingshan was known to be invincible in the outer sect. But we knew it was mainly because of the weapon he wielded. It's known that this blade is incomparably sharp, and it's also, Zhou Yi was even more direct as he said, Junior brother Pei, name a price. I want this saber. Pei Ling frowned. I'm sorry, senior brother Zhou. It is a gift from senior brother Zheng, so it's not convenient to sell it. Besides, I want to use it myself, and I don't plan to sell it. Zheng Jingshan. After confirming that Pei Ling did not have any backing that they could not afford to offend, the three of them tore off their disguises. Miao Qing'an laughed coldly. If not for Fairy Li's concern for her distant relative, would a piece of trash like him be able to hold on to the position of the inner sect master? For you to use him to suppress us is simply a joke. While senior brother Zhou is kind-hearted and is willing to bid, as he spoke, he reached out to grab towards the saber and shouted, "Count yourself lucky that I fancy your saber too." Pei Ling quickly grabbed the life, extinguishing blade and jumped back. He asked coldly, "You dare to ignore the sect rules?" Sect rules. The three of them looked at each other and burst out laughing. The holy sect does have strict sect rules, but this place is remote. Even the patrolling disciples will only come here at noon or midnight. As long as we avoid these two timings, who cares if you're willing to give us a saber? No matter how strict the holy sect's rules are, it's still about evidence, and you have no proof. Now you've regretted gifting the knife. Don't tell me you want us to return you. Junior brother Pei, I didn't expect you to be so naive. Miao Qing'an spat on the ground in disdain. What's the point of telling him so much? When I saw this newcomer, I thought he had someone to rely on in the sect, just like ourselves. That way, we could become friends. But is this kind of lowly scum worthy of living with me? Although I don't know why he chose this place, since he's here, he has to pay the price. He licked his lips, his gaze greedily sweeping over the pale blade. This bastard doesn't have much to take advantage of, but this blade is really not bad. Damn it. Pei Ling finally understood the male disciple's malicious intentions. He thought that the other party had found a good place for him to stay, but it turned out that he was intentionally sending him to these three people. He tightened his grip on the life, extinguishing blade and threatened, even if senior brother Zheng's strength is lacking in the inner sect, he is still Fairy Li's distant relative. Fairy Li did not forget to bring him along when she went out to do her missions. Since you guys look down on senior brother Zheng like this, aren't you afraid that he will report it to Fairy Li and she will not let you off? Do you even understand Fairy Li's identity? Zhou Yi looked up at the sky and laughed. A complicated look flashed in his eyes, but he continued, haven't you noticed that us outer sect disciples call an inner sect disciple like Zheng Jingshan as our senior brother? Even for faction masters, we call them senior brothers and senior sisters. Yet, why do we call core disciples fairies? That's because, in the eyes of the holy sect, we outer sect disciples aren't qualified to call core disciples as seniors. And in the eyes of the core disciples, the inner sect leader is not worth mentioning, much less us outer sections. Your surname is Pei. You must be in the same family as Zheng Jingshan's dog in the outer sect, Pei Hongnian. Go and find out later when did Fairy Li ever care about Pei Hongnian's life or death. With that said, he formed hand seals with both hands. Bronze rust-colored patterns surfaced on his cheeks and the back of his hand, quickly enveloping his entire body. His pupils also emitted a faint green. In the next moment, he jumped up and punched toward Pei Ling's head with both fists. Zhou Yi intended to kill. Pei Ling's heart sank. He thought of the sect rules that he had just finished reading and immediately understood. These three people had good family backgrounds, and so they could afford the fine. From their attitudes, the life-extinguishing blade was clearly not cheap, and it might even be priceless. In that case, it was worth it to pay a fine after killing him. With this thought, Pei Ling's saber was hacking towards Zhou Yi's arm, but it switched directions instantly and headed for his neck. After all, at the moment of life and death, who could care about the sect's rules? Bastard! Zhou Yi and the other two were shocked. It was not the first time they had conspired to plunder their fellow disciples with their family backgrounds and cultivation levels, so they had gained a lot of experience. Although they were not afraid of the sect's rules, they were unwilling to kill anyone. After all, the penalty for killing someone from the same sect was too high. Even if they could afford it, why should they hand over the money to the sect? However, from their experience, it was easier to force the victim to submit by showing a murderous intent. Afterward, it was more convenient to take anything valuable. Also, the victims would often not dare to take revenge or report them in fear of losing their lives. Who knew that Pei Ling was a vicious person who seemed honest when he answered every question they asked? Zhou Yi hurriedly dodged. Although his green ghost battle body had reached the point where it was invulnerable to sabers, it still depended on what kind of saber it was. The life-extinguishing blade was the weapon that Jing Jingshan used to become well known in the outer sect. He did not dare to take the hit head on. He doesn't have any saber skills. Right at this moment, Li Siguang, who was the best at observing among the three, suddenly reminded them. In that case, beat the life-extinguishing blade away. Pei Ling's heart sank when he heard this. The rules of the Deep Sea sect were too long, and he had spent too much time reading it. He did not have time to cultivate the blood malevolence saber art before the three arrived. Otherwise, he would not be randomly hacking at this moment. Just as Li Siguang's voice rang, Miao Cheng'an had already formed hand seals, muttering under his breath. A black chi blade instantly condensed in front of him, and with a flash, it sliced towards Pei Ling's arm that held the saber. Pei Ling did not have the time to dodge. He could only raise his weapon and slash diagonally with the life-extinguishing blade. Although he could destroy the chi blade, the blade shook violently under the effect of the chi blade.